So looking at the worksheet on differential equations, number 4, dy dx equals 1 plus x over square root y, and y of 2 equals 9. If you want to write that as a point, 2 comma 9. And so separate the variables, integrate both sides, and then use that point to find c. Sounds real easy when you say it quick like that. So let's multiply to get square root of y over. Multiply dx to get dx over. So that's the separate the variables step. By the way, if you get one of those on the free response AP test, free response questions are worth 9 points each. Almost always, getting from here to here is worth a point. And I feel like that's about as free a point as you can get on an AP test, because that's pretty basic algebra. Then we'll integrate both sides to undo the derivative, the antiderivative. I don't really antiderivative square roots, I'd rather antiderivative powers. So I'll rewrite that square root as 1/2. And then, let's see, up the power by 1, divide by the new power. And there needs to be a plus c, but I'll do that on the other side. So 2/3 y to the 3/2. On the right-hand side, x plus x squared over 2 plus c. Is this where things broke down? Did you make it that far? Because our calculus is over. Now it's time for algebra. So I need to solve for y, plug that stuff in, and figure out what c is. Reagan?
Why don't you simplify y all the way down to just y? Because on some of them you do it, and then you lose some of the others.
I guess I don't understand. There's simplify. Which stage would I simplify?
To get y by itself without the 2/3 or the to the power 3/2.
Oh, I need to do that. Oh, you're asking why do I need? We didn't do it on some. I think we need to get in the habit of doing it, and occasionally we'll not do it. So the default needs to be solve for y. So let's solve this for y. So I want to multiply through by 3/2. So y to the 3/2 equals 3/2 x plus 3/4 x squared plus, what's 3/2 times c?
C.
Just c. Again, that's a different c now, so be careful. And then how do I fix the power of 3/2?
Cube root squared.
Cube root squared, or we could just say 2/3, which is cube root squared. You're right. So y equals 3/2 x plus 3/4 x squared plus c. And then you could write it as cube root of all that squared, or you could just 2/3. So that's what we call the general solution, as opposed to the particular solution. General solution is, I don't know what c is. And sometimes they don't give you enough information, and they just want you to give the general solution. Most of this worksheet it gives you a point so you can find the particular solution. So 9 goes in for y. Two goes in for x. It looks like they've rigged this to work out reasonably well for us in terms of fractions. So 9 equals 3 plus 3 plus c to the 2/3. Again, this is just algebra at this point. 6 plus c to the 2/3. So now to undo the 2/3, back to 3/2. Right, to undo the 2/3, we need to raise it to the 3/2. The bottom number's the root, the top number's the power. Right, the root grows on the bottom, the flower power grows on top. So the square root of 9 is 3. 3 cubed is 27. So c is 21. So y equals 3/2 x plus 3/4 x squared plus 21.
That's a different answer.
All to the 2/3.
C is different.
Number 5. dy dx equals negative xy squared. And we have the point 1, negative 0.25. So dy over y squared equals negative x dx. Separate the variables, integrate both sides. We spent far too long in first period arguing over where the preference for the integral should be on this problem, because I put it there and one student didn't want it there. He wanted it out in front. And I said I didn't want to mess with the negative.
It doesn't make any difference.
It does not make any difference. So and later on he relented, and it kind of depends on the problem as to which one is kind of preferable. It doesn't matter though. So that's the short story is it doesn't matter as long as it's a constant. Integration of I don't like that because I want to make that
Power in the bottom.
Yeah, power in the bottom could mess me up. People will say, "Oh, I'll increase the power by 1 and get 3." Like, well, no. So increase the power by 1 and get negative 1. Divide by negative 1. So increase the power by 1. Divide by the new power.
That's just negative y.
So that would just be negative 1 over y. I'll clean that up in a minute. I'll probably fix the negative as well. Integral of x would be x squared over 2. And then plus c. Okay, calculus is done. Now it's time for algebra to see if you can handle all of the pieces there.
Multiply or divide by negative 1, which basically gets rid of all the negative signs.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to just leave it as plus c, although now that's a different c, so be careful. Alright, how do I get y by itself now?
It's numbers.
You can flip everything. Now be careful, you can't you can't flip pieces, you got to flip the whole side, the right-hand side. So you can flip everything as long as you flip it all at once. Like that. You can't go flipping the pieces, you got to flip the whole thing over on the right. Is there a better way to do it? I don't know. You could multiply through by y. You're going to end up basically there, regardless how you get there. This is kind of cleanup preference work, but I don't like the 2 in the bottom, in the denominator of the denominator. So if I multiply top and bottom by 2, oh, what do you want to... I can leave this as 2c, or I can just write it as c.
C. Let's just do C.
That's fine. Again, I'm going to kind of sort of back label those as now that's my third different c, but it's fine because I haven't found it yet.
So will that make your answer for C different? Like,
Yeah, if you put that as 2c,
but you'll still get credit for either C.
right? Because I'm not going to be grading if you have c correct. I'm going to grade if you have the function correct.
Which version of C do you have?
Right. So you could have a different version of c there, but we should still get the same thing in the end. In fact, I think it wasn't this problem, but a different problem. I put 2c in there in first period. Okay, so there's our general solution, but we have a point we can plug in. I'm going to write that as -1/4 because it feels like that might be the way to go with the fraction there. 2 over 1 squared plus c. Let's cross multiply, I guess. So 8 equals -1 minus c. Probably should have put the negative on the 8. That'd have been easier. So add 1, we get 9. So c equals -9. Which means if you'd put 2c over here, then your c would have been
-3.
9/2, I think.
Yeah.
2 over... But regardless of what you picked for c or where you substituted in, we should all end with 2 over x squared minus 9.
For the other one, isn't the C a function?
Brett?
Actually, answer Molly's question.
No, it's
first.
fine.
Okay,
Sorry,
you're...
I was cutting myself.
C in the answer, but I want you to fill it back in. So yes, this is right where that's C, but I want you to write the final answer with C filled in.
Okay, well, like, go up to the one we did before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't that the answer? But then you have the C as 21, right?
Right. It's this, and here I've got C as -9.
Okay, yeah. But I'm saying, like, so it's okay if there's a different number there in your answer.
No, if you stopped here, or if you wrote that as 2C right there,
Oh, then you'd have to divide.
then your C, I think, would have turned into -9/2. But when you plugged it in, you still would have landed at this.
Okay.
Everyone should land at this as their final answer,
Okay.
even though you might have, depending on where you solve for C, it might look a little different along the way.
So whenever you cross multiply 1 plus c by -1, couldn't, instead of having it be -c, can it just be positive c?
This is what I got.
Yeah, yep.
So then,
But then you better be real careful because now you've switched C and it's going to be different than this C. So when you go to plug it back in, if you don't change that sign, then this C and this C are different, and that's going to... You're playing with fire if you do that.
okay.
I guess I'd say once you plug in X and Y, you probably don't want to mess with C, because if you change up who C is down here, then... So, I mean, the question, and it was a good one, if you could cross multiply and say 8 equals -1 plus C. But now that's a different C than this C. So when you go to plug it in, you're not plugging the right thing in.
So after you find the general solution, I'm gonna say that you're getting normal because like
Yeah, I think so. Once you find the general solution, you probably want to stop playing games with C. Because you better be very careful.